there we go. Can you hear me? Awesome.
I didn't get no.
Hello, people online.
On the 27th.
Hello, everybody here. Oh, Kenda's here. There is banana cake over on the side. It is delicious.
I seen a picture on.
All right, so why don't we, before we begin, pull up the desserts du jour. We have got delicious banana cake with peanut butter chips, but not too much. It's the right amount of peanut
Is that
butter.
what's in there? Those
See, you can go back to live, buddy.
Spider bite.
See, Heather is one of those where it's like
He
you
wears
can load the
jeans,
peanut
so
butter
I mean, he
and
didn't
like
have
more peanut butter
shirts
better.
on.
It's got to be the right amount. I'm a
This is just
very
right.
Yeah, I like that. I didn't know it was peanut butter.
All right, and for those online, we have a new feature thanks to Paul. We have, ooh, it lights up. Did you see?
Oh, sweet.
It lights up.
That's pretty.
So hopefully online should be able to see it better.
Where, is that the light?
Yeah, yeah. Rather, we used to have that big light, the stage
Oh,
lighting
okay. Oh,
that were like
That's
blasting.
nice. Yeah.
So now it's more localized and it doesn't blind me and
Everything's
it's not sitting right in front of you guys where it's potentially blinding. All right, so thank you everybody online for joining us. If there's any audio issues, let me know. I think we've got all of our audio set up now. It should be all established and we're good. So, welcome back everybody. Sorry about last week. Did some reshuffling of some things. I was at Camp Concordia leading staff Bible study. So I was doing Bible study. Where were you guys? We weren't doing Daniel though. So today we pick back up in Daniel 4. And Daniel 4 is going to be the last we hear about Nebuchadnezzar. It'll be the end of his reign. Well, not the end of his reign, but the last we hear about him during Daniel's time. And it's about a dream. So we got another dream going on. And this one is a little bit more straightforward, not as much drama, but it's got some interesting stuff. So I'm going, you know what?
Pretty thick.
Well, yeah, there's just, we divided up a lot of the reading. It's not that long. We should, here, I'm going to prove a hypothesis here. We should get through this pretty quick, which means we're going to go about 10 minutes over, if it holds true. I figure one day I'm going to become over-prepared. I'm going to be like, oh man, this is going to take an hour and a half, and we're going to get through it like that. But I'll never be that prepared, so you don't have to worry. All right, so Nebuchadnezzar's dream. Before we get into it, just the only thing to say about it is that this is going to be unique in all of Daniel, in that God is going to deal graciously with a Gentile. Okay, he actually shows a little bit of mercy on Nebuchadnezzar and brings a little bit of grace to him. So let's just get right into it. First slide, verses 1 through 3. King Nebuchadnezzar, to all peoples, nations, and languages that dwell in all the earth, peace be multiplied to you. It has seemed good to me to show the signs and wonders that the Most High God has done for me. How great are his signs, how mighty his wonders. His kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and his dominion endures from generation to generation. All right, so this is, Daniel is recording this. This is a letter that Nebuchadnezzar is writing or had written out to his subjects. So all the nations, all the lands, so everybody under Babylonian control. This is Nebuchadnezzar writing to them. And he's writing to them about God. You know, he's to show the signs and wonders that God has done, to how great his signs are, how mighty his wonders. His kingdom is everlasting. So it sounds like, well, something clearly has happened, right? And we're going to see throughout the letter, you know, he's going to detail what, you know, he had a dream and what happened and and Daniel actually fills in a little bit of details of what actually happened. And then we get a little prologue with Nebuchadnezzar's sign off. But something has happened for the king to rejoice. Rejoice so much that he wants to tell all the people about it. And it seems like he's praising God. I mean, he is. I don't want to, let's give him a break. Good old Nebu's, you know, he's praising God. I cannot tell you how annoying it is to write Nebuchadnezzar so many times in my notes. I ended up just writing the king over and over again because I just couldn't take it anymore. But he's praising God. He seems to indicate like, oh, God is everlasting, almighty. His dominion endures from generation to generation. So clearly something's going on. Now we want to kind of carefully tread here to see where he's going to go with this. But yeah, he seemingly lost his edge a little bit. I lost my. When you're training up the new guys. Here, 1 second. We will advance the slide. All right, next slide here. See, this is what you get when you hire family. Actually, he does a really good job. All right, verses 4 through 8. I, Nebuchadnezzar, was at ease in my house and prospering in my palace. It's good to be the king. I saw a dream that made me afraid. As I lay in bed, the fancies and the visions of my head alarmed me. So I made a decree that all the wise men of Babylon should be brought before me, that they might make known to me the interpretation of the dream. Then the magicians, the enchanters, the Chaldeans, and the astrologers came in, and I told them the dream, but they could not make known to me its interpretation. At last, Daniel came in before me, who was named Belteshazzar, after the name of my God, and in whom is the spirit of the holy gods. And I told him the dream, saying, there we go. Okay. I got you, bud. All right, so another dream. This guy gets a bunch of dreams. Now, there's a few differences in what happened the first time he dreamed and this time. So the first time what are some of these differences?
The first time you wouldn't tell him his dream.
Yeah, wouldn't tell. Details, right? And here he did, right? He shared. Okay. Anything else?
The big thing I noticed about Nebuchadnezzar during this time is he's not threatening anyone.
Yes. Threaten? No threat. That is a big one. Yes.
You mean, are you talking about this?
In chapter 2, in Daniel chapter 2, he had a dream
Oh.
that Daniel came to interpret. So we're
Yeah.
just doing the comparison between those two.
But I missed the one after that one.
That was the fiery furnace.
Yeah, I missed that.
Okay, well, we won't cover the fiery furnace. You're good. You'll be fine.
Weren't there more people that he called?
Actually, a good catch in that the list is slightly different, but it's only that instead of saying like I think he says enchanters or astrologers are replaced. He said sorcerers before, so the list is a little bit different. But I think it's kind of the idea is he got everybody, all the wise people together. Now, there was definitely a sense of mocking God. Now he's praising God. There's a subtle one where, you'd have to go back and actually look through chapter 2 to see, but in chapter 2, the dream was troubling. He was dismayed. Dismayed, I think? Oh no, he was troubled by the dream. Here, he's afraid. Okay, so he's a lot more fearful. He was just kind of like, ooh, this is bugging me. It's kind of like, you think of the movie and like, what was that guy's name? And it just bugs you. He was troubled by this, but he's afraid of this one. So there's little differences going on here. There was also, along with the wouldn't tell the details, there was no sense of urgency necessarily. He was willing to, no, you tell me the dream. It wasn't like, do it now. And plus, that when Daniel said, hey, appoint a time, let me know when you want me to come in and do it. Here, it's very urgent. He's like, no, you tell me now. He brings everybody in and is like, I need to know. Partially, most likely because this is something that is very fearful to him. He was at ease and prospering, and all of a sudden this dream just throws everything out. All right, so he gets all of the wise men in, and nobody can do it. Just like before, nobody can interpret the dream. But then Daniel comes in. All right. Now, remember, this is a letter from Nebuchadnezzar to his subjects. So he does say, okay, then Daniel came in. He who is named Belteshazzar, and then, which is, we'll see it kind of towards the end a little bit, how Nebuchadnezzar, well, actually, just pay attention to how he words things. Because, as the king, with a letter to his subjects, he's always going to paint himself in a good light. He's going to try to, and this, some of the details of what happens here is not very good for him. It's not a good look. So he's going to be very careful about how he presents things, and especially with gods, and he's saying like, oh, this God is the Most High and everlasting, and Daniel, hey, Daniel, whose name, he's named after my God. He kind of adds in there like, oh, he's named after my God, so, I know he sounds Hebrew and all that, but, we got him right. He's one of our guys, so you can trust him, because Daniel's going to be the one to interpret it. So he's kind of putting in a stamp of approval to his people, saying like, okay, named after one of my gods, or my God, and in whom is the spirit of the holy gods. All right, so he acknowledges that Daniel has something in him. He has a spirit of something. All right, now he says the holy gods. So, where is he in terms of praising God? Is like, yeah, he's still not there. And, I did not look at the Hebrew word there for gods because, there's Elohim, word for Lord or God in Hebrew, is actually in a plural format, but it refers to a singular, Yahweh. But the format for Elohim is in plural. So sometimes that's like, oh, well, contextually you can see, oh, it's referring to God, or maybe it's referring to little, gods with little g. So I didn't really double check, my bad. But anyway, it does show that he's kind of, he's a little iffy, okay? But he's saying like, okay, here's this guy, and holiness dwells in him. The spirit of holy God dwells in him. So, cool thing that we got going on here is when he says that, in whom is the spirit of the holy gods. There's a nice parallel here with Genesis 41:38 with Joseph. In that Pharaoh, when Joseph interprets Pharaoh's dreams, Pharaoh says that Joseph is a man in whom is the spirit of gods. So actually,
When was that?
that was in Genesis. That was way back in Genesis with Joseph.
Okay.
So you see this cool parallel where Pharaoh says of Joseph basically almost the same thing that Nebuchadnezzar says of Daniel. And very similar situations, Joseph is a Israelite taken into exile in Egypt and interprets dreams and is elevated in the power structure. Daniel, Israelite, taken into exile in Babylon, elevated, interprets dreams and all that. So we not only see kind of a nice little parallel just theologically and historically, but also, you look at this for the people of Israel who are in Babylon. Certainly if they were well-versed in the history, and they might have recalled Genesis and what kind of this whole, wait a second, what's going on with Daniel seems to be very familiar here. They could recall in their history, this happened to Joseph. And the fact that Pharaoh says the same thing that Nebuchadnezzar says is a nice little connection where, the hope of the people there is saying, well, you know what, this has happened before. The Israelites, or the people of Judah, rather, who are in Babylon, are looking at it like, this is home now. We want to go back home, but we're in exile. So this kind of connection is a neat, really, really cool way for them to look at this and say, you know what? This has happened before. History is repeating itself. And you know what happened before? God preserved his people and released them out of exile from Egypt. So now they're looking at the same situation. Okay, you know what? In this silly letter that Nebuchadnezzar is writing to his people, the people of Judah can look at that and be like, you know what? There's hope here. God's working. It's the same thing, doing the same thing over again. So it's a nice little kind of a little nugget of hope in there for everybody. All right. Any questions so far? Cool. Next slide, verses 9 through 12. O Belteshazzar, chief of the magicians, because I know that the spirit of the holy gods is in you, and that no mystery is too difficult for you. Tell me the visions of my dream that I saw and their interpretation. The visions of my head as I lay in bed were these. I saw and behold a tree in the midst of the earth, and its height was great. The tree grew and became strong, and its top reached to heaven, and it was visible to the end of the whole earth. Its leaves were beautiful, and its fruit abundant, and in it was food for all. The beasts of the field found shade under it, and the birds of the heavens lived in its branches, and all flesh was fed from it. All right. Dreamo tree. So, big old tree. I can draw that.
Can I go back a minute? You asked for
Yes,
questions. and-
absolutely.
I found it kind of odd that he didn't go right to Daniel
Yeah?
rather than go through all his other people, because
You noticed
Daniel
that,
was
huh?
the one that gave him the answers before.
Yeah?
Why would you go to somebody else after that?
It's a good question. I don't know. I'm not sure we even have a satisfactory answer for that. Although, I mean, he is being very kind of, he's watching his language. He's being very careful about what he says to make sure he's not, cast aspersions over or whatever. So maybe it could be a thing where, hey, I went to our people first, because still, I mean, yeah, Daniel is good, and then there was some awesome stuff, but still, he even before he was like, okay, your God is awesome, but he's still trying to find a place for his God there.
And not only that, Daniel was living with him in his castle, right?
Right. Yeah. So why does he go? I don't know.
Should be musicians or magicians too.
Yeah.
That's kind of different.
Yeah. I mean,
He wanted to make sure that maybe his God
it's
would
possible.
be as good as Daniel's
It's
God.
possible. It's possible.
I
Yeah.
don't know who that is. I
Don't know.
It's a little off. I'm sorry.
Another difference between the first dream and the second one was that the second one produced fear and alarm
Mhm.
in Daniel. And the first one, the Nebuchadnezzar just didn't know what to make of it.
Yeah. And that, I don't know if that has anything to do with it. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, you could go the route of, this is God's ordaining, and even to kind of to lead Nebuchadnezzar to go first to his magicians and wise men and show their failure, so that Daniel is brought in. I mean, I feel like that's a cop-out answer, like, oh, God did it. I mean, that's
Makes sense.
you can always use that answer. Like, why did that happen? God did it, got it. But I mean, honestly, we don't really have anything. I think the best we can do is just kind of some random guesses.
Yeah.
But don't know. It is interesting, though, that he kind of, you'd think like, hey, maybe bring in the guy who is, actually, because
I'm right down the hall.
Right. And even that Daniel was able to, like, all the other guys were like, oh no, tell us your dream, and he knew that they were going to do that. So I mean, his level of trust was already kind of,
Yeah.
he was very suspicious of them anyway. So we got a big tree reaching to the heavens. So
I don't know how to shut it off.
this is very common symbolism here. So in near is that Near Eastern or Far Eastern? Whatever, Middle Eastern culture of that time, that area. Trees were a common symbol for cosmic life, well-being. In the Old Testament, trees are occasionally used as metaphors for people or nations. So already we see, okay, this represents maybe a people or a person. Give you 3 guesses who it might be representing. Nebuchadnezzar. Yes, but we'll get there. It reached to heaven. Now, it is high and mighty and reaches to the place of the gods. So if we were going with Nebuchadnezzar as a metaphor for the tree, then it's like, oh, great and mighty is Nebuchadnezzar. Judean audience might have connected with, hearing reach to the heavens with the Tower of Babel. So, Daniel in his Hebraic mind probably sees this and he's already like, oh yeah, okay, this is your hubris right here. That you Nebuchadnezzar are so awesome and great and mighty that you reach to the heavens and you shelter, all the people, all the nations who have come under you, and you shelter them and you feed them, visible to the end of the earth, prominent world power. So very much like, okay, this is a great mighty vision. All right, so far it's like that's fine, that's good, that's the good part of the dream. But things go askew. Next slide, verses 13 through 17. I saw in the visions of my head as I lay in bed. That's cute. And behold, a watcher, a holy one, came down from heaven. He proclaimed aloud and said thus, chop down the tree and lop off its branches, strip off its leaves and scatter its fruit. Let the beasts flee from under it and the birds from its branches. But leave the stump of its roots in the earth, bound with a band of iron and bronze, amid the tender grass of the field. Let him be wet with the dew of heaven. Let his portion be with the beasts and the grass of the earth. Let his mind be changed from a man's, and let a beast's mind be given to him. And let 7 periods of time pass over him. The sentence is by the decree of the watchers, the decision by the word of the holy ones. To the end of the living may know, that the end of the living may know that the Most High rules the kingdom of men, and gives it to whom he will, and sets over it the lowliest of men. All right, so cut it down. Phew, I'm not going to draw it. It falls out. All right, so cut it, and it just leaves a stump. All right, you know what? I've got an eraser. There we go. There we go. Cut it down, tear it up. Judgment. This is a dream of judgment. Judgment befalls the tree. Falls on every aspect of the tree's majesty. So the height is taken away because it's chopped down. The leaves and fruits are scattered and stripped away. The beasts under it flee. Everything is completely removed from it. But it leaves a stump. Some dreams, like, everything is completely demolished, nothing is left. But here, at least, there's a stump. So there is a little sign of hope. Okay? There's this bound with a band of iron and bronze. Don't know. Nobody knows what that means. As we get into this, not that I want to jump ahead or anything, but when you see, he's talking about this tree, okay, and if you notice, it goes from the tree and then starts talking about it as him. Let him be wet with dew. Let his mind be changed from a man. So ever so subtly in the retelling of this vision, it goes from the tree to him. So the tree is a him, and we've already established that it's going to be Nebuchadnezzar. So giving to him a mind of a beast means he's going to go insane. He's going to become feral. He's going to have his mind changed for a period of, 7 periods of time. Okay, we'll get to that. So there's a lot going on here. So he's going to be judged. He's going to lose his mind. He's going to lose everything, lose his mind. But there's going to be some hope. The 7 periods of time, it's vague. It's unclear. It doesn't say 7 days, 7 months, 7 years. It's 7 periods of time. We've already seen Daniel use 7 in...
Where does it say 7?
Oh, in verse 16. And let 7 periods of time pass over him.
Oh, okay.
So, like when he was heating up the furnace in chapter 3, heated up 7 times, right? It just means the utmost, or the completeness, the fullness. So basically, what he says, 7 periods of time will pass, however much time God ordains. Because the whole thing is, basically, the whole point of this, the point of this judgment is that the living may know that the Most High rules the kingdom of men, and gives it to whom he will, and sets over it the lowliest men. So the whole point of this dream is to humble Nebuchadnezzar, and to show him God is in control, there's nobody higher than him, and the fact that Nebuchadnezzar has anything is because of God. So it's a pretty big deal. So however long that takes, that's 7 periods of time. If it takes an hour, there you go, 7 periods of time. If it takes 20 years, that's 7 periods of time. it doesn't really work with any other. If you break it down, it doesn't work anyway. So we'll get into that a little bit. Let's see what else we want to say here. It talks about watchers, the decree of the watchers. So watchers and ye holy ones, right? So angels. The decree of the watchers. So it's like, okay, the angels are declaring this thing. It's kind of like, okay. But if you recall various points in the Old Testament, specifically Job, when Satan comes to God to like complain about Job, what is God, remember what God is doing? He's presiding over a council, the council of heaven, okay? And it's not like everyone has, all the angels get a vote or anything. But he assembles his angels together, and he's the one who's like, okay, shall we do this? And, it's like, who's going to say no, right? And it's God kind of, the council room of heaven. He does this, and it talks about this. What we'll get in Daniel is he'll make the point that actually God is the one sending the message. These watchers are the ones delivering the message. So I didn't think anybody would get confused by that, but oftentimes I whiz right over those things, and somebody like, wait a second, and then I hear about it years later, and it's a mess. All right, any questions so far about the dream? So this is what he lays it all out. This is the situation we're dealing with. He's got a dream. It's very frightening because it seems to be this judgment kind of thing and going crazy, and it's just not good. All right, next slide, verse 18. This dream I, King Nebuchadnezzar, saw, and you, O Belteshazzar, tell me the interpretation, because all the wise men of my kingdom are not able to make known to me the interpretation, but you are able, for the spirit of the holy gods is in you. All right. And actually, you know what? That might be part of his, maybe this is how he's doing it, is to, maybe he's emphasizing the fact that this is, because he's going to get to the point where he does extol God. And when we get to the end, it's going to be, we're going to discuss this a little bit and be like, does he believe? Like, did he come around? Because it kind of sounds like it. So he might be setting this up in his letter to be like, these old wise guys who believe, they're gods, they didn't work, but Daniel's, this is the one, and this is the one that I'm backing now, and he's all right. We're kind of getting there. It's interesting that the wise men couldn't interpret it, because
Or that they didn't just make something up like.
oh yeah, that they had nothing.
lied.
But the weird thing about it is, like, it's not that difficult of a vision. I mean, even if you didn't know who the tree was, I mean, like, okay, here's something that's high and mighty, and it's chopped down. You guys could figure that out for anything, right?
They were probably scared.
Well, yeah, given
Hey, it's you.
given the track record, that's well, what did he do? He threatened to kill burn down their homes and their families. Okay, maybe. That might have been in the back of their heads. So yeah, they definitely, either they're fearful, but I mean, even still to see, I mean, it is pretty, there's nothing really tricky about this vision. So you could, I mean, this is, they're astrologers, they're wise men. This is what they do. And it's not tricky at all. So it is kind of curious. I mean, fear is definitely probably a part of it. Make no mistake. It also could be that God is blinding them to the vision. I mean, again, the old God did it. But I mean, this whole scenario here is God is making a point, like, I do things. Like, nothing happens without me doing it. So in actuality, the God did it argument works really well here. So yeah, that's less of a cop-out. I feel better about that. Okay. God did it. It works. All right. Next slide, verse 19. Then Daniel, whose name was Belteshazzar, was dismayed for a while, and his thoughts alarmed him. And the king answered and said, Belteshazzar, let not the dream or the interpretation alarm you. Belteshazzar answered and said, My lord, may the dream be for those who hate you, and its interpretation for your enemies. All right. Daniel, okay, remember Daniel's a smart kid. Well, however old he is now.
So
He's-
the king was talking all the time to Daniel.
Yes, well, he is now, yeah.
Now, I thought he was talking to his.
Well, he was talking to, like, he was writing a letter to his subjects, but now he's talking directly to Daniel.
Oh.
Oh, yeah, you're good.
And Daniel's name was Bel.
That was his Babylonian name. Yeah. That was the name Nebuchadnezzar gave him.
Who gave it to him?
Nebuchadnezzar.
Oh, okay.
So Daniel's a smart guy, and we're going to see, because he's going to be very tactful, very diplomatic about how he interprets this dream. He's going to leave certain things out. He's not going to emphasize certain things. And so you can see right off the bat, Daniel knows exactly what this is all about. Because he hears it and he's like, oh no. I'm going to have to tell him what this means. All right? And I love how Nebuchadnezzar's like, oh, don't worry. It's like, you are going to burn down families. I'm going to worry. And so he comes back, and this is beautiful, because he starts off by saying, my Lord, hey, loyalty, respect, okay, my Lord Nebuchadnezzar. And it's like he knows exactly who this dream is about. But he starts off by saying, basically, he's getting him ready for the bad news. So he's like, Nebuchadnezzar, this is bad, okay? But this dream should be for your enemies, for those who hate you. Because this is bad news, and I wish it were for them. I wish it were for anybody else but you, king. He's a smart kid. He knows the right way to go about this. So he's showing loyalty to the king. He's showing deference. He's showing a sensitivity to him, and and to be fair, he's also saving his own neck in case.
This king was very gullible.
Well, and he's gullible, but he's also very fit or fits of violence and rage. He's got a volatile temper, so it's like he doesn't know how which way this is going to go. So Daniel shows, and what I said before when we started talking about Daniel is a great book for learning how to interact with a pagan world. And sometimes you have to, think and engage in ways that are like, okay, let's work within the system here a little bit. Let's not, take anybody else off that we don't have to, and all right. Now he's not going to lie. He's not going to sugarcoat too much, but he is going to kind of like, let's focus on this side. We won't talk about that. So he won't be deceptive, but he's definitely going to kind of highlight things versus other things. All right, next slide, verses 20 through 22. The tree that you saw, which grew and became strong, so that its top reached to heaven, and it was visible to the end of the whole earth, whose leaves were beautiful and its fruit abundant, in which was food for all, under which beasts of the field found shade, and whose branches the birds of the heavens lived. It is you, O king, who have grown and become strong. Your greatness has grown and reaches to heaven, and your dominion to the ends of the earth. Smart guy. Repeats the vision almost word for word, ensuring that it's like kind of reassuring the king, like, I listened, I heard every single word, so you can trust what I'm about to say. Like, all right, this is from God, remember, this is not me, it's not my thing. This is exactly what you told me. All right, we're going through this. So this is a good idea if you're going to give a very nasty king bad news. Make sure you're like, I'm on the up and up. Now, although it definitely represents the arrogance of Nebuchadnezzar, he doesn't mention it. He doesn't point out like, oh, your greatness, and how the folly of it all. He's like, no, your greatness has grown, and you are mighty, king. Oh, he doesn't mention it yet. He wants the king to hear. It's the whole vinegar and honey approach. If he wants the king to, he's taking the king through the progressions here. He doesn't want to lose the king along the way. So he's not going to be right off the bat like, yeah, you're an arrogant, such and such. No, you've become strong and great. Your greatness reaches the heavens, to the ends of the earth. Okay? Verse 23, next slide. And because the king saw a watcher, a holy one, coming down from heaven and saying, chop down the tree and destroy it, but leave the stump of its roots in the earth, bound with a band of iron and bronze, in the tender grass of the field, and let him be wet with the dew of heaven, and let his portion be with the beasts of the field, till 7 periods of time pass over him. All right, continuing this diplomatic approach, he just says, notice he detailed every part of the dream up to that point, right? He doesn't go into detail about the destruction. He doesn't belabor like everything's taken away and their branches are and you gotta cut it off. And no detail. He just says it's destroyed. Just rip off the Band-Aid. So he doesn't go into detail. He's not obscuring it, but he summarizes it. Right now, he's leaving out the transformation from a human mind to a bestial mind. So he's like, let's leave the insanity for later. We'll get there. And wisely leaves out the bit about, and God is in charge of all, giving the kingdom to the lowliest of men. It's like, not wise, especially he just said, you are, great. But really, God gives kingdoms to the scum of the earth, like you. He doesn't say that. Even though that was part of the dream. So he's just kind of like, hey, it's judgment. Yes, it's a bad judgment thing we got going on here. Now we get to the interpretation. Next slide, 24 through 27. This is the interpretation, O king. It is a decree of the Most High, which has come upon my lord the king, that you shall be driven from among men, and your dwelling shall be with the beasts of the field. You shall be made to eat grass like an ox, and you shall be wet with the dew of heaven. And 7 periods of time shall pass over you, till you know that the Most High rules the kingdom of men, and gives it to whom he will. And as it was commanded to leave the stump of the roots of the tree, your kingdom shall be confirmed for you from the time that you know that heaven rules. Therefore, O king, let my counsel be acceptable to you. Break off your sins by practicing righteousness, and your iniquities by showing mercy to the oppressed, that there may perhaps be a lengthening of your prosperity. All right. So, he dances around a lot of stuff, let's ease into it, and then bam! Gets him right in the end, which is beautiful. But this is a good approach. He didn't go right in. He's bringing him through, okay, come on, and then this is what you need to do. He's very good at this. He's really good.
In a tactful way,
He's
really.
very tactful. Yes, he is excellent. He's a good preacher. So notice at the very top, it is a decree of the Most High. So he's saying, yes, the watchers you saw, but it is the Most High God. Because think Nebuchadnezzar's mind, watchers, all the gods, whatever. No. The Most High God sends this message to you. All right, there's only one God. The king will be afflicted. So he does, okay, you will lose your mind. You will be, living like an animal. Now, he doesn't bring up the iron binding with the iron and all that. What it could be is, in a positive light, it could be like the binding the stump is kind of like preserving his kingdom, like he says. It'll be preserved for you until you get your head straight. Your heart straight, really. Or it could be, it's going to be so bad that they're going to have to bind you. Like, you're going to be like a wild animal, and they're going to have to put you in chains. Which, again, you don't want to tell the king that. It's bad enough as it is. So he does say, he does say, okay, this period of time will pass over you until you know that the Most High rules the kingdom of men and gives it to whom he will. So until you acknowledge who God is, and that he is the most holy God, and that he has sovereign control over all things, and he is the one who has given you everything. So it's a come to Jesus thing, right? Therefore, O king, let my counsel be acceptable to you. Okay? Please hear me. May it be acceptable to you. Break off your sins. Practice righteousness and your iniquities by showing mercy to the oppressed. So, it's a call to repentance. And it's beautiful because it's just right out there. He's like, yeah, practice righteousness. Show mercy. So, now here's where it gets fun. And there's this nice long part in the apology, the defense of the Augsburg Confession. So our Book of Concord, one of the volumes in it is the Augsburg Confession, and then the defense of the Augsburg Confession. There's a fun little part in there that talks about this specifically, and they take the approach that that basically Nebuchadnezzar, because spoiler alert, he does, he loses his mind, but he gets it back, so he does come back, and the reformers kind of take the position that, oh, well, then he came to faith. Because what the argument they're saying is like, well, Daniel is saying like, well, the only way you can do this, the only way this is ever going to happen is if you practice righteousness, and the only way you could do that is through faith, which is fair. The only way that you can truly show mercy and that God would restore you is through faith. So, in the Book of Concord, the Augsburg Confession, it seems to indicate kind of an idea that, well, so the idea is here that Nebuchadnezzar must have come to faith of some kind. I'm going to differ on that one, partly because the Book of Concord is dealing with teaching about the doctrine of justification, and using this as an example is fine to make a point. But as we're going to see at the end of Daniel, or end of chapter 4, it doesn't quite, it's not as clear. Nebuchadnezzar might have faith, but it's iffy. So anyway, the idea that Daniel's presenting here is that to be truly righteous, to truly show mercy, is to act in faith. So if Nebuchadnezzar is going to do this, then he's got to, he's got to believe in Yahweh. So this is a big deal. This is a pretty big deal. Nebuchadnezzar has to be completely changed and transformed here. Comments, thoughts?
You said something about, he went a little crazy, the king, and had to be bound to chase. Is that referencing with the band of iron and bronze?
Yeah. We don't know exactly if that means he was bound, but it could be. And the fact that Nebuchadnezzar doesn't really mention it later seemingly might lend some credence to that, because he's talking to his people and he's not going to say something like, oh, by the way, your king had to be locked up. And he's not going to lay out all the bad stuff. So it could be, or it could be that it was secured.
Well, it
Either way.
The tree was bound in this.
Yeah,
so
and he's the
that's
tree,
where
and
I
so-
got that connection.
Yeah, so it probably was. Trying to give the poor guy an out, All right, next slide, verses 28 through 33. All right, and this is kind of this is sort of Daniel inserting his own little commentary here. So this is not necessarily part of Nebuchadnezzar's actual letter to the people. Although it might have been, but this is definitely Daniel kind of entering into, like, saying this is what happened. So verse 28, all this came upon King Nebuchadnezzar. At the end of 12 months, he was walking on the roof of the royal palace of Babylon. And the king answered and said, is not this great Babylon, which I have built by my mighty power as a royal residence and for the glory of my majesty? While the words were still in the king's mouth, there fell a voice from heaven. O King Nebuchadnezzar, to you it is spoken, the kingdom has departed from you, and you shall be driven from among men, and your dwelling shall be with the beasts of the field, and you shall be made to eat grass like an ox. And 7 periods of time shall pass over you, until you know that the Most High rules the kingdom of men and gives it to whom he will. Immediately the word was fulfilled against Nebuchadnezzar. He was driven from among men and ate grass like an ox, and his body was wet with the dew of heaven, till his hair grew as long as eagle's feathers, and his nails were like bird's claws.
Quite a picture.
Wow.
He's a looker.
He didn't mess around.
Yeah.
Well, they kind of lulled him into complacency by waiting a whole year.
Well, and yeah, well, that's the first thing. Yeah, a whole year goes by from the point he has a dream, which is fascinating, because Daniel's like, here's what you got to do to avoid it, and he's like,
Resisted repentance.
exactly, yeah, he resisted it, which not only shows his stubbornness, but on the flip side, what does this also show? God's patience. God allowed a year to go by. God could have waited a couple weeks and probably seen the writing on the wall. But he allows a full year to go by. So we see not only God's patience, but also his stubbornness.
Well, Pastor, by girding the tree, and I want to be sure I remembered that correctly, but by girding that tree, it actually does preserve it. It will grow and grow even stronger from the top when the gird is
Yeah.
been taken off.
And there can certainly be two different meanings to
Yeah.
that, absolutely. And showing kind of the flip side of the need for him to be restrained, certainly, kind of the law, and then the gospel of the preserving and strengthening and future growth. Absolutely. Yeah, that's a good point. So yeah, we see all of that going on. And basically, it just recounts, like, this is exactly how it was laid out. I mean, there's a repetition here of, and this is what happened. Because he's saying, like, yes, exactly as God laid it out, this is exactly how it happened. So yeah, not a pretty picture. Yeah, and he was just, it's not this great Babylon. Oh, my power, the glory of my majesty. Yeah, he clearly was not affected by the dream. So yeah, it's, and if really you could talk about, sometimes we need that humbling, we need that judgment to fall upon us before we yeah, I guess I was kind of prideful. Nebuchadnezzar could very easily be a stand-in for any one of us. How often we come and hear God's word every Sunday, and then there are times where we're like, oh, really? I've only been hearing it my whole life. I can't believe I didn't. Okay. So yeah, oh, God won't hear me. It's like, you come here every week. I tell you, God hears you. This is just how we are. We're all stubborn. And thankfully, God is patient. All right, moving on, verses 34 through 35. At the end of the days, I, Nebuchadnezzar, lifted my eyes to heaven, and my reason returned to me. And I blessed the Most High, and praised and honored him who lives forever, for his dominion is an everlasting dominion, and his kingdom endures from generation to generation. All the inhabitants of the earth are accounted as nothing, and he does according to his will among the host of heaven and among the inhabitants of the earth, and none can stay his hand or say to him, what have you done? Wow, look at this. Amazing.
Big change.
Big change. Maybe. Possibly. Sure. So he starts at the end of days. So this is at the end of the 7 periods of time. At the end, it's not like end of days, like last day, but just at the end of the time appointed for his madness. Now it's interesting. Nebuchadnezzar is like praising God and kind of coming around to this idea like, oh, God does everything. He propels everything. He controls everything. And yet if you read what Nebuchadnezzar writes, who's the one doing all the work? I lifted my eyes to heaven. My reason returned to me, which is a very passive way of saying God gave me my reason back. He's going to take every bit of caution to not directly ascribe things to God in a more, in a very obvious way. It's going to be like, yes, my reason returned to me. Okay, I bless the Most High. I praise and honored him who lives forever. All right. He does according to his will. All right. Okay. None can stay his hand or say to him, what have you done? Of course, saying like, oh, no one can challenge this God. What did he do in chapter 2? He told Daniel, or I think it was Daniel. Was it chapter 2? No, chapter 3, the furnace, where he said, bow down and worship this. And Daniel's like, no. And he's like, oh, no, you're going to do this because, he said, who is the God who will deliver you out of my hands? So he's changed his tune big time. He challenged God before, and now he can. So he does confess some truth stuff. He says God is sovereign. Sure. He is nothing before God. Okay. God does whatever he wishes. Cool. He was wrong to glorify himself for his accomplishments. God is the source of this stuff. So he sounds like he's come around, but it's still it's a little fuzzy. What did we not get so far? Anything? Any acknowledgement of what?
Any repentance, really.
Yeah. And see, this is the problem with, is he or is he not saved? Well, you know what? Let's save that because we got 2 more verses, and then we can argue this one. Last 2 verses, 36 and 37. At the same time, my reason returned to me, and for the glory of my kingdom, my majesty and splendor returned to me. It's just very... my counselors and my lord sought me, and I was established in my kingdom, and still more greatness was added to me. Now I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise and extol and honor the King of heaven, for all his works are right, and his ways are just, and those who walk in pride he is able to humble. I mean...
Well, he was always a king, and it's hard to...
To
you know,
change?
he did say that he honored and praised
Yeah, no, he does, yeah.
the King of heaven,
Right. And he's very...
and all of his works are right, and his ways
Right.
are just.
And it's fun how he kind of works that in too, because he's like, all his works and his ways are just and they're right. But he kind of lumps that in with the whole like, my greatness was restored to me and I was built back up. And yes, this God is just and right. It's like,
It's still not repentance.
yeah, and he didn't say his works was just and right. You know, he didn't say that right after he made you crazy.
It's
And-
hard to be humble when you're that good.
Right, yeah.
Sounds like a song.
Exactly. Yeah, so it's really kind of like, oh. And even the way he closes it, because this is the end of the letter, and he closes it with kind of a doxological sort of closing, where, you know, kind of how you look at all Paul's letters, and he kind of ends it with all glory be to the God in heaven, yada, 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 right? So he closes it too. So now I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise and extol and honor the King of heaven, for all his works are right and his ways are just, and those who walk in pride he is able to humble. He closes by saying that. It's like, yeah, that's all true, right? But he's using it kind of as a send-off and not like, and this is what I believe now. It's just sort of, it sounds good, and it's a good way to end the letter. You know, it's... So, is Nebuchadnezzar a believer now?
Well, it never
Kind
says that he quit believing in all of his other gods.
Yeah, because he's the king of heaven. Might just mean he's the king of all gods. Which is like, no, that's not quite right.
James says
Yeah.
the demons believe too, and they shudder.
Right. So, I mean, he says true things about God. And he confesses, you know, clearly he has knowledge of God now. I mean, and he has correct knowledge of God. He acknowledges God is sovereign over him and everything. That God is omnipotent, that he is mighty and great over all things. Praises and honors God. You know, it's like, yeah, those are all the right things. But if you go back, I mean, so you think about this. The people of Judah who are now exiled in Babylon. You rewind a bit and go back to when they were still in Judah. Well, the reason why they're now in Babylon is because they would have said all the same things too. So why were they in exile? Because even though they had the knowledge, even though it was like up here was right, and here was wrong. So, it's you know, we never want to, you know, I don't know if Nebuchadnezzar is in heaven or not. I'm not God. But, you know, the biggest argument against the guy is just that, you know what? Yeah, acknowledging who God is, acknowledging all this stuff is fine. But there's no personal trust, relationship, relying on God here.
Well, I think that's pretty clear when you look at the first line here at 36. At the same time, my reason returned to me for the glory of my kingdom.
Yeah, for the glory of what?
Right, my kingdom,
Uh-huh.
my majesty and splendor. So
I-
he's
And
still
they
focusing on
sought me
himself.
out.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. Because, yes, so God restored me for me.
Me, yeah.
Not for his glory. Not for...
So he still might believe there is.
But you don't know if he really, I mean, he might have said that, but he might have, in his heart and mind, knew that God let him restore
He might have. You know, and especially if we go along like what we see in the Augsburg Confession seems to indicate that, like, well, if God restored him, you know, and Daniel said this is the only way to be restored, you know, this is my charge to you, and God restored him, then that means he must have practiced righteousness. The only way I could do that is through faith. Where it's like, okay, so it's like, there's a good argument.
But it
I
smells
don't
like
believe what
pride.
it says.
It does smell like pride. It does. It's very stinky. It's very prideful,
I
stinky.
don't believe
yeah.
one word if he was standing there, I'd tell him. Yeah, he's killed probably thousands of people.
Ron has cast his vote, and then we'll be thumbs down from
Well,
Ron.
you know what? We got the same issues here sometimes nowadays, if you think about it.
I mean, it's
People lying to you.
it's a tough one, and you know, for me, I would never, I'm not going to pass judgment either way.
No, me either.
But yeah, I look at it being like,
I'd feed him a handful of fentanyl.
oh jeez.
They're there, now go eat some grass.
We might, that'll be next. We'll have a different Bible study next week.
lying.
We'll deal with that. But yeah, and kind of to make this all nice and Lutheran. You know, everything that he acknowledges about God, all the things that he says, this is who God is, and all that he acknowledges, is, to bring it back to a nice Lutheran terminology, is glory. Mighty, strong, all this stuff. What he does not say anything about is cross. So we got theology, glory, theology, cross, kind of
Yeah,
in the
but
background
he
here.
wasn't around.
Well, no, but I mean by that, I just mean this is the Lutheran terminology, cross. So we're talking. There's no talk about grace, or mercy, or forgiveness. So he's saying God restored me for my glory. You know, because to restore me to my greatness, and isn't he wonderful? He's mighty to do this, and he can do all these things. But he never once says, because I sinned, because I was a sinner, because I did not practice righteousness, I was brought low. I was humbled before God, and he turned to me in grace and mercy, forgave me my sins, and restored me. See,
Who was the king that freed the Jews?
from Babylon?
Yeah,
Cyrus of Persia.
was that after?
Oh yeah, that's after.
I was gonna say, I thought maybe it was Nebuchadnezzar.
Nope. No, there's at least another. Yeah, we got more guys after him. But yeah, Cyrus of Persia is the one who comes in and conquers Babylon, and then sends the Jews
But
back.
then he releases them
Yep.
because of God.
Yeah, actually,
Yeah.
it's really interesting how God uses him. In fact, yeah, see, we're 7 o'clock, of course. This has nothing to do with Daniel, but the fun thing is when Cyrus of Persia comes in and liberates the Jews. What it refers to in Scripture is that refers to Cyrus as God's Mashiach, which is God's Messiah. Is this pagan king who sends the Jews back to their home, which is kind of just a fun little thing where we see even God uses a pagan ruler as a type of Christ to kind of foreshadow what Christ is going to do. But that's neither here nor there. That's later. But yeah, Daniel, or with Nebuchadnezzar rather, we don't get any of this, and that's the part that, we can look to it. Everything he says is true, but there just doesn't. There's none of this language here, and it's like, because anybody could say true things about God.
About doing that?
No,
Son,
Yeah, he did.
What's that?
Yeah.
Daniel said, therefore, O king, let my counsel be
Oh,
accepted
yeah.
with you. Break off your sins by practicing righteousness.
Yeah.
So-
Your iniquities by showing mercy.
yeah.
Yeah.
Daniel talks about it,
Yeah.
but Nebuchadnezzar doesn't.
He's
Well,
full
he
of
talked to, but he
But-
was talking to him.
Right. And so, that's the crux of it, is that Daniel says this is what you need to do. So by implication, he must have done
He
it.
might have done. You don't know.
But even that, you can, hey, we go to the cop-out answer there and say even if he didn't do it, guess who did it? God did it. So God had mercy even though Nebuchadnezzar didn't. Maybe if we're going down the road of he didn't practice righteousness, God shows his mercy, and then he says, you know what? I'm going to show you mercy. And in showing you mercy that you don't deserve it, I mean, this would be a heavy cross move, right? As he says, Nebuchadnezzar, you have not repented. You have not, but I'm going to show mercy and restore you and this. And you'll see that I am truly God, and the people will see. You go down that road too.
Well, Daniel says that if he breaks off his sins and those things, that essentially he won't have to have his tree chopped.
True, well, yeah, true.
But the breaking of the thing is
That's a good
just
point.
after the 7 periods of time.
That's a good point. So when God says the time is up. So yeah, there we go. There, nice and tied up. So he's in hell. No. Nebuchadnezzar's burning right now. Ron, right on.
I think it's God got this guy anyway, let him live, just to show how you shouldn't be. He's full of himself. He just,
Yeah, oh yeah.
and
Yeah.
he ruled by threat.
Yeah.
Like, if you don't believe what you're gonna go in the furnace, or you're gonna be beheaded, or whatever they wanna do to you.
Right,
They
right.
wanna do to you.
Yeah.
So everybody was afraid, including Daniel there for a while,
He's a crazy guy.
a few weeks ago.
When he says, pray,
But-
that I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise and extol and honor the King of Heaven, well, that's because he felt, the majesty.
It's amazing what happens when you get your stuff back,
Because it was
right?
all back together, yeah.
Back here in the first part, he still believes in his gods.
Oh, no, see, that's the thing. It's like this is a letter written after the fact. So it's like, but yeah, that's an
Probably
excellent.
wanna
Thank you for
redact
that
that
point
a
because
little
I kind of
bit.
lost
Yeah, but
track of that.
you would do that if you didn't know any better.
I love that the two, but give him a chance. And you're like, get rid of him, burn him.
Definitely.
We got a little. Two sides of the coin here are just
These
perfect.
two went to the same high school, do you believe it?
If you just know people like that, you think, do these like the Romans did. But he was just
Oh,
full of
man.
himself.
You're not wrong. You're not
He
wrong.
was king.
Yeah, that's right.
All
Who
right.
made him king? Himself, probably.
Well, ultimately, God did.
Huh?
God did.
Yeah, but he made him,
But he thinks he.
But he thinks it was all him.
but he's still ruled by iron fist.
Yes.
And having people afraid of him.
Hey, that's your kingly prerogative.
Yeah.
He'd be a good candidate for assassination. That's what happens to those people.
All right. Any questions or thoughts about Daniel 4? Yeah, Daniel's fun. It's a fun book. It's nice. It's short. It's very easy to read. It's like nice digestible chunks. It's a good one.
I can't believe the odds were.
Of course, she probably has that close work.
There's so much glory in this, self-glory.
I know. I think it's. I mean, I always try to put it back in the context that they're dealing with Rome and they're really trying to make a break there, and especially with Rome being very much like they get to say who's in and who's out, and sort of taking that away and saying, look, God gets the final say. Maybe I don't know. But in the end, what they're trying to illustrate a point about forgiveness and grace and mercy and all that. So I don't know that you could really push it too far with where they're going with that. But
What time frame was this?
what time frame? This was
Yeah.
what
5,000?
No, 500 BC.
500 BC.
Was that
Okay.
the 6th century BC? Is that
Yeah.
it goes backwards? So that's the 6th.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so then it'd be,
Closer to 1,000.
No. Because Jerusalem, the Babylonian exile or conquest was 587 BC. So it was recent. Recent history.
so the Romans were around then too.
No, not yet. Not
They
yet.
weren't quite, yeah, it was closer to,
Yeah, you get
One or two-
the
1 or 2
Babylon, and then
BC,
the next
100,
power is
200.
Persia, and then you got the descendants of Greece, and then Rome. I think that's how it went. Something like that.
I'm reading that.
Heather's not fact checking me online, so.
I'm reading that, starting to read the Bible from the very beginning.
Oh,
And,
good luck when you get to Leviticus.
I'm reading a hard Bible. Is there an easier that I could understand that I'm
Well, hey, I got a series of videos for you. Actually, this year we started in the morning prayer. We're doing a year through the Bible. It's really going to be a year and a quarter because we don't do Sundays. But every day we do, it's a chronological reading, so we're jumping around a bit, reading kind of things as they happened. Because if you just start if you start at the beginning of the Bible, so start in Genesis and start reading, everything goes great, and chronologically, it goes great until you get to like Numbers and Leviticus, and then it drags. I mean, it's not bad, but I mean, read how to build the tabernacle, and let me know how that goes for you.
Pretty bad.
It's dry. It's very dry.
But you can get a Bible.
And then you get into the genealogies, and that's rough. But then the chronology jumps around a bit because the books are kind of, they're separate entities, and they're covering different periods of time. So you kind of read, and then it jumps back here, and then it kind of jumps around. So what we're doing is a chronological reading. If you want to read more straight through, I'd start in the New Testament.
Well,
It'll be a lot easier.
But I've read the whole Bible.
Right.
But I can't remember what one I was reading. It was more I could understand it. It wasn't, the names I kind of read over, but,
Really?
I could
How
do
could
that
you?
Bible pretty good, and then I'm talking to my grandson, and I want him to get baptized. He hasn't been, in fact, I don't think any of mine have. And I told my boys I want them baptized. But Ike I give him that Portals of Prayer, and he reads it every day. He said, Grandma, it's really good. And then I was thinking about, I'm buying them, this Sarah Young wrote about Jesus' calling and Jesus always.
Okay.
And I was gonna give him one of those
Okay.
books, but I'm gonna give all my grandkids that. But I thought maybe I'd give them a Bible, but I wanna give them one that they would read
Right.
and understand
Yeah.
more than,
You can, Bonnie, you can get a Bible, and I got one, because I had trouble understanding some of that stuff and the people. But if you don't understand it, you look down here, and
It tells
it
you.
interprets and tells you
Yeah.
what it's saying.
Like a study Bible.
Whether it's, whether
Sure.
it's true all the time or not, you gotta pick out some of that maybe. But it's like 25,000, explains 25,000 verses. Each page is, I'll show you, I'll bring it in for you,
Yeah.
see if you can read
That
it.
could be a good option. Sure.
Yeah,
Study Bible.
That's easy.
We have a Lutheran study Bible, which has all those things are
I got
Lutheran
that. And I
understandings.
got I found my old catechism book,
Mhm.
and I thought, well, I'll give that.
There you go.
Is there any simple,
Last year, that really
like the New International Version, or any
The
particular
living, what,
translation
the living,
that you think is very readable and understandable for, say, a young person? or-
And reliable?
Reliable. Yeah, the New International, there's the NIV, which is the old New International Version, and then there's the TNIV, which is the New International Version. That came out in the last decade or so. That one, don't like that one because it changes a lot of the language to be more inclusive, which is not necessarily, in some cases it's a little bit worse than others. It'll change something where, it does change the meaning of something when you say like, and all of, and you will be made sons of, you'll be sons of God. So they changed that to say, well, you'll be sons and daughters of God, because, you can't just have sons. But when you do that, you lose the thrust of what he's saying there, because in that culture, to the people who are hearing that, sons were the only ones who could inherit. So for a daughter or a woman to hear, I could be a son, is huge, theologically, because it's saying, oh, I get treated equally. And so when you change it, it loses that actual theological thrust there.
But if you're a modern day woman and you read that, you feel left out. And
Yeah.
if you're in a church where the men don't read it correctly,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
are left out.
Yeah, I know. There's that one. We use the ESV for most of our stuff, which is I think it's fine. I don't think it's perfect. There's one, oh gosh, is it the RSV? There's one that I think is probably the more best kind of both worlds of readability and accuracy, but off the top of my head, I can't pull it.
No,
The
there
King
should-
James is, New King James,
I like the RSV.
it's a little bit old fashioned, kind of,
Still.
the language is still a little,
Now, does
The
your
RSV?
children,
I think Concordia used to sell an RSV.
Probably.
That's the only place I've ever.
I don't know
been.
why, I mean, we used to use NIV and we've sold out, not sold out.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
It's out of
did.
stock.
We're gonna get an email from Synod tomorrow or something. What? We've hitched our wagon, I don't know, to the ESV. I don't know if,
Capitulated.
I think it's because, I don't know that there's a reason other than, oh, it's pretty good. Which is like, oh, that's a great reason. I don't know. But I mean, we don't have, like, there's no Lutheran translation.
Mine's a RSAP, read as soon as possible. That's what it is.
Oh, gosh. Oh, look at the time, we're 12 minutes over.
Are we offline yet?
What?
Are we offline?
No, not yet, so.
No.
No, this is all good stuff. So we'll go offline and then we can share all the really fun stuff. So thank you all. Have a good night. And there we go. And